My name is Nia, and I am 34 years old. I was lying in a hospital intensive care unit hooked up to heart monitors when I happened to glance at the morning news. The local station was broadcasting the departure of a luxury super yacht from the harbor. Right there on the screen, I saw my parents, my golden child sister, her husband, and my own husband, Marcus. They were holding champagne flutes and laughing under the sun. Feeling a sudden knot in my chest, I checked my banking app. A fresh charge of $65,000 for a royal yacht package glared back at me from my black credit card. I called Marcus. "Where are you?" I asked. "I am at the office working myself to the bone to pay your medical bills, baby," he replied, his voice dripping with fake exhaustion. I let out a soft laugh. "Enjoy yourself," I whispered, and hung up the phone. It was in that exact moment I decided to destroy them all. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to burn your life down just to rid yourself of toxic family members. To understand how I ended up in that hospital bed, you need to understand the crushing pressure I was carrying. As a black woman who fought her way up to become the vice president of fraud investigation for a massive financial firm, I track missing millions for a living. I follow paper trails. I uncover lies. But the biggest lies were happening right inside my own home. For months, I had been working 80-hour weeks paying for my sister Chloe to launch her failed fashion brand, keeping up the pristine appearances my parents demanded for their megachurch congregation, and funding my husband Marcus and his endless string of fake investment opportunities. My parents' pastor, Silas and Beatrice, ran one of the largest ministries in the city. To them, image was absolutely everything. Chloe was their golden child, the beautiful socialite who married Spencer, a white real estate developer. They treated Spencer like royalty because his family connections gave them access to elite political circles. Meanwhile, they treated me like the family bank. They expected me to fund their lavish lifestyle while constantly reminding me that I needed to be a more submissive wife to Marcus, so I would not emasculate him with my corporate success. The physical exhaustion finally caught up with me on a Tuesday afternoon. The doctors called it Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which is broken heart syndrome, brought on by extreme physical and emotional stress. My body simply shut down. When I woke up in the intensive care unit, everything smelled of sterile alcohol and bleach. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor was the only sound keeping me company. I opened my eyes expecting to see my husband sitting in the chair next to my bed. I expected to see my mother Beatrice holding my hand or my father Pastor Silas praying over me. Instead, the room was completely empty. The visitor chair was pushed into the corner, holding nothing but a pile of folded hospital blankets. I lay there for 2 days, slipping in and out of consciousness, wondering where my family was. I tried to convince myself they were just busy managing the church, or that hospital visiting hours were too strict for them to get through. You always make excuses for the people you love until the unvarnished truth slaps you across the face. On the morning of the third day, a nurse propped me up and turned on the television mounted near the ceiling to give me some background noise. The local news channel was running a lifestyle segment about a highly exclusive yacht club setting sail for a 2-week Caribbean tour. The reporter was standing on the dock talking about the extravagant amenities, the private chefs, and the ocean view suites. The camera slowly panned up to the VIP deck of the massive white vessel. I stopped breathing. The heart monitor beside my bed picked up its pace, beeping frantically. There, standing at the glass railing in designer resort wear, was my younger sister Chloe. She was posing for a selfie, her perfectly styled hair catching the ocean breeze. Next to her was her white husband Spencer, raising a glass of expensive champagne toward the camera. Spencer always loved spending our family money while pretending he was the one elevating our social status. And right beside them were my parents, Pastor Silas and Beatrice, smiling brightly, as if they did not have a daughter lying half dead in a hospital room across town. But the absolute worst part was seeing Marcus, my husband, the man who vowed to protect me in sickness and in health. He was wearing a brand new linen suit, holding a tropical drink and laughing out loud at something Spencer said. They looked so carefree, so completely unburdened by my absence. They were not worried about my failing heart. They were celebrating their newfound freedom. My hands trembled as I reached for my personal belongings bag, tucked inside the bedside table. I pulled out my phone and unlocked the screen. No missed calls, no worried text messages, nothing at all. I opened my financial app, navigating straight to my primary checking and credit accounts. As a fraud investigator, I am highly trained to spot anomalies, but seeing my own money stolen by my own husband felt like a physical punch to the gut. Pending transaction, $65,000. The merchant name read Royal Yacht Excursions. The card used was my exclusive Black American Express. The card I kept locked in a biometric safe at home for absolute emergencies. Marcus knew the emergency override code. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. The tears that had been burning in my eyes completely dried up. When you spend your entire life being the responsible one, the workhorse, the one who fixes everyone else, mistakes you eventually forget what it feels like to just be a human being. They did not see me as a daughter, a sister, or a wife. They saw me as a corporate asset to be drained. And right now, the asset was temporarily out of order, so they decided to take the cash and go on a tropical vacation. I took a deep breath, letting the oxygen flow into my damaged heart. I dialed Marcus. The phone rang 4 times before he finally answered. The background noise on his end was carefully muffled, but I could still hear the faint sound of seagulls and the heavy ocean wind. "Hey, baby!" He said, his voice dropping into that smooth, practiced tone he always used when he wanted something from me. "I am so glad you called. How are you feeling today?" "Where are you?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly flat. I did not want to give him a single ounce of my anger. Anger is a hot emotion. What I was feeling was absolute ice. "I am at the office," he lied without a second of hesitation. "It has been a total nightmare here today. I am grinding through these reports, trying to make sure we have enough liquid cash to cover your hospital deductible. You know how these medical bills can ruin a family. I am just working myself to the bone to take care of you, baby." I stared at the television screen on the wall. The news segment was replaying the footage of the yacht leaving the dock. I watched my husband wave enthusiastically at the camera while telling me he was sitting at a desk. "Is that so?" I said softly. "Yeah," he sighed, laying the emotional manipulation on thick. "It is exhausting, but you are my priority, Nia. Chloe and your parents have been an absolute mess with worry too. We are all just praying around the clock for you to get better. I will try to come by the hospital later tonight if I can wrap up these spreadsheets." The sheer audacity of his lie was almost impressive. He was standing on a moving boat headed for the Caribbean, promising to visit my hospital bed tonight. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not demand to know why he charged $65,000 to my credit card. A seasoned fraud investigator never shows the target what evidence they hold until the trap is fully closed and locked. "Take your time, Marcus," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Enjoy yourself." I hung up the phone and tossed it onto the bed. The profound sadness was entirely gone, replaced by a sharp, focused energy. I had spent 34 years playing the good daughter, the supportive sister, the provider wife. I had let my parents guilt-trip me into funding Chloe and her luxury lifestyle. I had let Spencer disrespect me in my own home. I had let Marcus gaslight me into believing I was never doing enough to nurture our marriage. They thought my heart attack was their golden ticket. They thought I was weak and incapacitated. They had no idea that they had just given me the exact motivation I needed to tear their entire world down to the studs. I was mentally cataloging all the assets I needed to freeze and all the security passwords I needed to change when the heavy wooden door to my hospital room swung open. A nurse walked in holding a digital tablet and a stack of paperwork. Her expression was deeply uncomfortable. She avoided making eye contact with me as she approached the foot of my bed. She started shifting her weight from side to side. "I am so sorry to bother you while you are recovering, but we have a bit of an administrative issue that requires your immediate attention." I sat up slightly, adjusting my hospital gown. "What kind of issue?" She looked down at her glowing screen. "Well, the billing department just tried to process the authorization for your continued stay in the intensive care unit. Your health insurance provider rejected the claim. They stated that your policy was suspended early this morning." "Suspended," I repeated, my professional instincts instantly kicking into overdrive. "That is impossible. My premium payments are auto-drafted from my primary checking account on the first of every single month. The funds are always there. The nurse bit her lip, looking genuinely sympathetic to my confusion. I am afraid the auto-draft failed this morning. The insurance company reported that the linked checking account returned a notification of insufficient funds. The account has been completely drained. I stared at her, feeling the sterile hospital room tilt around me. The credit card charge for the cruise was one thing, but my primary checking account held over $200,000 in liquid cash. That was the account tied to my mortgage, my business expenses, and my life insurance. Marcus had not just taken a luxury vacation on my dime. He had stripped me financially bare while I was hooked up to machines fighting for my life. Thank you for letting me know, I told the nurse, my voice dangerously calm and steady. I will make some calls and handle it immediately. As she quietly left the room, I picked up my phone again. The game was no longer just about teaching my toxic family a lesson. It was about absolute survival and total destruction. They had left me for dead and funded their high society celebration with my life savings. They wanted to see what happened when the family workhorse finally stopped working. They were about to find out exactly what happens when the workhorse decides to fight back. If you are watching me right now, you might notice the way I trace the rim of this crystal glass. I am sitting in my meticulously designed living room, the warm amber lighting casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. As the camera glides smoothly to my left, tracking my every movement, I want you to picture the exact moment I walked out of that hospital. I did not wait for formal discharge papers. I ripped the intravenous line from my arm, signed a waiver against medical advice, and walked out into the blistering afternoon heat. The physical toll of broken heart syndrome is heavy, but pure unfiltered rage is a spectacular painkiller. The taxi ride to my neighborhood was a blur of calculating thoughts. I live in a highly sought-after gated community, a house I paid for with my own sweat and corporate bonuses. When the taxi pulled up to my driveway, I noticed something immediately wrong. Marcus had parked his pristine sports car diagonally across the paving stones, completely blocking the path. I paid the driver, adjusted my coat, and walked up the front steps. I punched in my 6-digit entry code on the smart lock. The keypad flashed a harsh red light. Access denied. I tried again. Access denied. Marcus had not just emptied my bank accounts. He had actively locked me out of my own sanctuary while I was fighting for my life. A cold smile touched my lips. Marcus always forgot that I was the one who personally configured the security system. I typed in the 12-digit master override code I had buried deep in the back-end software. The lock clicked, glowing green, and the heavy oak door swung open. The sight inside my home made my chest tight, but not from medical distress. The grand foyer was littered with designer shopping bags. Luxury boxes were carelessly tossed across my custom velvet bench. Chloe had apparently treated my home as her personal staging area for their cruise preparations. The sheer disrespect was palpable. They had celebrated their theft in my own living room. But the mess in the foyer was nothing compared to the mechanical grinding noise echoing from the second floor. I slipped my shoes off, climbing the floating staircase in complete silence. The noise was coming from my home office. I stood in the doorway watching a scene so absurd it almost felt scripted. There, kneeling in front of my built-in wall safe, was my white brother-in-law, Spencer. He was sweating profusely, holding an industrial power drill, trying to force his way into the steel lock. Spencer was a man who built his entire career exploiting black neighborhoods, buying up distressed properties, and slapping a fresh coat of paint on them to sell to wealthy investors. And now he was literally trying to drill into my personal wealth. "What exactly is the plan when you get through that steel, Spencer?" I asked, my voice slicing through the noise of the drill. Spencer jumped so hard he dropped the heavy tool onto my hardwood floor, leaving a deep gouge in the wood. He spun around, his face draining of all color. "Nia," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be in the intensive care unit." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I asked you a question, Spencer. Why are you destroying my property?" He quickly wiped the sweat from his forehead, his arrogant demeanor rushing back in to mask his initial panic. He straightened his designer shirt and let out a forced chuckle. Come on, Nia, do not overreact. Marcus asked me to swing by and grab some urgent tax documents for the business. You know how disorganized your husband can be. I was just trying to help him out. Family helps family, right? I stared at him, letting the silence stretch until it became suffocating. He was standing in my house holding a drill he brought to break into my safe, and he dared to use the word family. You could have called me for the code, I said softly. Spencer scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. Marcus said you were completely incapacitated. Besides, you black women always get so worked up over nothing. You all get that high blood pressure from being stressed and angry all the time. I was just trying to spare you the headache. You should really go back to bed, Nia. You look terrible. The casual racism, the blatant disrespect, the absolute entitlement radiating from him was intoxicating because it confirmed exactly how stupid he truly was. Spencer looked at me and saw a weak, exhausted black woman who had just survived a heart attack. He saw an easy target. He did not see the forensic accountant who spent her days dismantling criminal organizations. Any other woman might have screamed. Any other woman might have called the police right then and there for breaking and entering. But I am not any other woman. If I called the police now, they would arrest Spencer for attempted burglary. He would post bail in an hour, and Marcus would immediately know I was onto their financial crimes. I needed them comfortable. I needed them confident. I needed them to believe they had successfully neutralized the threat. I let my shoulders slump, forcing my breathing to sound shallow and labored. I put a hand against my chest, playing the exact role he expected me to play. You know what, Spencer, I whispered, sounding entirely defeated. You are right. I am too tired for this. Just take whatever Marcus needs from the bottom drawer and get out of my house. Spencer smiled a greasy, triumphant smirk. He thought he had completely dominated the situation. See, that is the spirit, Nia. Just rest up. Leave the heavy lifting to the men. He quickly gathered a stack of meaningless tax returns and a velvet box containing some moderately expensive jewelry I kept in the visible safe. He pushed past me in the hallway, not even offering a word of apology for the mess. I listened to his heavy footsteps descend the stairs. I listened to the front door open and slam shut. The moment. The house fell completely silent. My posture straightened. The manufactured weakness vanished from my body. I walked over to the large abstract oil painting hanging on the far wall of my office. It was a piece I had commissioned specifically for this room. I reached behind the heavy canvas and pressed a hidden latch. The entire painting swung open on silent hinges, revealing a sleek biometric scanner embedded in the drywall. I pressed my thumb against the glowing glass and leaned in for the retinal scan. The wall clicked, sliding open to reveal my actual safe. Inside sat a row of encrypted hard drives, a stack of burner phones, and physical copies of every single financial document linking Spencer and Marcus to their fraudulent businesses. Spencer thought he was a criminal mastermind because he knew how to wield a power drill. He had no idea that the safe he was trying to break into was nothing but a decoy, a shiny distraction filled with costume jewelry and outdated paperwork. I pulled the master hard drive from the real safe and connected it to my laptop. It was time to stop observing and start dismantling. The hunt had officially begun, and I was going to follow their stolen money all the way to their absolute ruin. The blue light of my computer monitor illuminated the dark office, casting long, sharp shadows against the walls. If you are watching closely, you can see the reflection of scrolling data in my eyes as the camera slowly pushes in, capturing the sheer velocity of my fingers flying across the keyboard. This is my domain. In the corporate world, I dismantle multi-million-dollar embezzlement rings before my morning coffee. Cracking into my husband's carelessly secured desktop computer was like taking candy from a particularly arrogant toddler. Marcus always used the same predictable password variations based on his college fraternity. It took me exactly 4 minutes to bypass his security firewall and access his encrypted local drive. I did not start with his emails. Amateurs start with emails. I went straight for the financial ledgers and legal files he had hidden under a folder disguised as cryptocurrency research. My eyes scanned the data rapidly, my training taking over completely. The physical pain in my chest from my recent heart failure faded into the background, replaced by the cold adrenaline of the hunt. The first document I opened confirmed exactly how he managed to drain my primary checking account. It was a medical power of attorney. I zoomed in on the signature line. There was my name perfectly forged in black ink alongside the stamp of a shady public notary Marcus had likely bribed. The document granted him total control over my financial and medical decisions the moment I was admitted to the intensive care unit. He had weaponized my near-death experience within hours of my collapse. I did not just forge my signature. He orchestrated a calculated legal strike to strip me of my autonomy. But a forensic accountant knows that criminals are rarely satisfied with just the cash on hand. Greed is a bottomless pit. I ran a diagnostic trace on his recent bank wires, linking his accounts to the public property registry. A massive anomaly flagged instantly on my screen. 2 days into my hospital stay, Marcus had secured a $2 million loan. I pulled up the loan origination documents and felt a dark, bitter laugh rise in my throat. He had taken out a second mortgage on this very house. Marcus had always assumed that because we were married, he had joint rights to the property. He assumed he could use the forged power of attorney to leverage my home for a massive cash payout. He was blissfully unaware that 3 years ago, I had quietly transferred the deed of this house into an irrevocable blind trust. The bank he used for the loan clearly did not perform adequate due diligence rushing the approval because Marcus presented falsified equity portfolios. He had just committed textbook mortgage fraud. He had handed me the exact rope I needed to hang him with a federal crime that carried a mandatory minimum prison sentence. But $2 million is a massive amount of liquid cash, and Marcus was too flashy to just let it sit in a savings account. I needed to know exactly where the money went. I initiated a wire trace following the digital breadcrumbs through a maze of poorly constructed shell companies. Marcus had routed the funds through 3 different limited liability corporations, trying to wash the transaction. But money always leaves a stain. The final destination of the $2 million made my blood run absolutely ice cold. The funds were wired directly into a corporate account belonging to Spencer. I opened Spencer's corporate portfolio, digging into the project the money was funding. My white brother-in-law was currently spearheading a massive aggressive gentrification project on the South Side. The South Side was the historical heartbeat of our Black community, filled with legacy apartment complexes and family-owned businesses. Spencer was using the $2 million stolen from a Black woman by a Black man to aggressively buy out and evict low-income Black families. How was weaponizing our own wealth against our own people, all so he could tear down those historic buildings and construct overpriced luxury condos. Marcus was not just a thief. He was a willing participant in the destruction of his own community just to earn a pat on the back from his brother-in-law. I sat back in my leather chair, the blue light bathing my face as the absolute magnitude of their depravity sank in. They were not just stealing, they were destroying lives. But the financial web was still too complex for just the two of them. Spencer needed institutional backing to pull off a project of this scale. A $2 million cash injection was only a fraction of what a Southside redevelopment would cost. He needed collateral. He needed a guarantor with massive community influence. I dug deeper, accessing the escrow agreements tied to Spencer's real estate firm. I bypassed 2 more security layers, breaking into the municipal property tax database. I pulled up the master collateral agreement for the Southside redevelopment project. The document loaded on my screen pixel by pixel. I stopped breathing. The pain in my chest returned a sharp, violent ache that had nothing to do with my medical condition. Listed as the primary guarantor for a $10 million commercial construction loan was the mega church my parents had spent their entire lives building. I scrolled down to the signature page. There, shining brightly against the digital white background, were the signatures of Pastor Silas and Beatrice, my parents. They had signed over the deed to the church. They had used the sacred sanctuary built on the tithes and offerings of thousands of hardworking Black families as collateral for Spencer's luxury condo project. My parents, who preached every Sunday about community and faith, who demanded absolute perfection and submission from me, had secretly mortgaged the spiritual home of our community to fund the greed of their golden child's husband. If Spencer defaulted on that loan, the bank would seize the church. My parents had risked everything they claimed to stand for just to appease Spencer and maintain their proximity to his affluent white circles. They had sold out their congregation, they had sold out their neighborhood, and they had happily watched Marcus sell me out to fund the entire operation. I reached up and touched the cold metal of the necklace resting against my collarbone. A perfectly calm, terrifying clarity settled over me. I was no longer just a betrayed wife or a scapegoated daughter. I was the executioner. They had built an entire empire of fraud, betrayal, and racial exploitation on a house of cards. And I was holding the match. I minimized the windows, ejecting the hard drive with a soft click. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I needed to let them return from their luxury cruise believing they had won. I needed to smile in their faces, eat at their table, and watch them dig their graves just a little bit deeper. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the rats to come home. 10 days later, the heavy mahogany double doors of my foyer swung wide open. The sudden burst of loud laughter and the clatter of heavy luggage shattered the quiet peace I had carefully cultivated in my home. If you were watching from the floor looking up at them, you would see an imposing wall of sheer entitlement. They marched into my house like conquering royalty. Marcus led the pack, his skin glowing with a fresh Caribbean tan. Behind him came my sister Chloe and her husband Spencer, struggling under the weight of oversized Louis Vuitton duffel bags and pristine Gucci resort totes. My parents brought up the rear, their faces radiant with the kind of rested satisfaction that only comes from spending stolen money. The moment Marcus spotted me standing at the top of the living room stairs, his entire demeanor shifted. The carefree vacationer vanished, replaced instantly by the tragic, exhausted husband. He dropped his expensive leather travel bag onto my imported rug and rushed up the steps, taking them two at a time. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into a suffocating embrace that smelled strongly of expensive coconut sunscreen and aged rum. "Oh my God, Nia," he gasped, burying his face in my neck. He actually forced a violent tremor into his voice. "I have been out of my mind with worry. I was going crazy pacing the floors of the house while you were in that hospital bed. Your parents saw how mentally destroyed I was. They practically forced me to get on that boat. They told me I needed a mental health retreat because my blood pressure was spiking from the stress of almost losing you. I did not want to go baby, but they made me." The sheer theatricality of his performance was Oscar-worthy. He was actually trying to convince a woman who just survived a massive cardiac event that he was the real victim of her medical emergency. He squeezed my shoulders, running his hands down my arms as if he were checking to make sure I was still in one piece. I let my body relax into his hold, adjusting my stance so I could look him directly in the eye. I did not pull away. I did not scream or demand to know why my bank accounts were empty. I placed a gentle hand on his chest right over his rapidly beating heart, and I offered him a weak, reassuring smile. Before I could deliver my lines, my mother, Beatrice, marched up the stairs. She was wearing a vibrant silk caftan that I recognized immediately from a high-end boutique in St. Bart's. She did not offer me a hug. She did not ask how my heart was functioning or if my doctors had cleared me to stand. Instead, she reached into her woven designer tote bag and pulled out a cheap plastic keychain shaped like a palm tree. She tossed it onto the console table next to me, where it landed with a pathetic plastic clatter. "You need to stop looking at your husband like he committed a crime," she snapped, her voice echoing with the same commanding, judgmental tone she used to chastise the church choir every Sunday. "Chloe suffered a devastating miscarriage last month. Your sister was spiraling into a deep, dark depression. She needed this family healing trip, and Spencer needed to see his wife smile again. You make more money than God, Nia. You have been blessed with a massive corporate salary, while your sister struggles to keep her creative boutique afloat. You should consider funding this family retreat as paying your tithes to the Lord and honoring your parents. Do not stand there and be selfish after we spent 10 days praying for your recovery on the open ocean." Chloe stood at the bottom of the stairs, clutching a brand new Birkin bag tightly against her chest. She managed to produce a single dramatic tear, wiping it away carefully so as not to ruin her fresh makeup. "It was so hard for me to relax knowing you were sick," she whimpered, looking up at me with wide, innocent eyes. She rested a hand flat against her stomach, playing up the tragedy of a miscarriage I strongly suspected was entirely fabricated just to excuse her reckless spending. But Pastor Silas told me that my unborn child would want me to find joy again. We booked the premium spa package just to help me process the grief. It was what God wanted for my healing. I looked at the three of them. I looked at my father, Silas, who was silently nodding in agreement with his wife and his golden child, using his religious authority to justify sheer financial gluttony. I looked at Spencer, who was smirking from the foyer, dropping the heavy bags onto my floor. Spencer was clearly amused by how easily my own family was keeping the wealthy black woman in her place. He loved watching my parents tear me down to elevate his wife. They had stolen $265,000 from me, forged my signature, committed federal mortgage fraud, and used my church as collateral for a racist gentrification project. And they stood in my house demanding that I thank them for the privilege of being robbed. I took a deep breath, letting my shoulders drop into a posture of complete submission. I allowed a look of profound guilt to wash over my face, masking the cold calculation burning behind my eyes. I stepped out of Marcus's embrace and walked down the steps, slowly approaching my mother. I reached out and gently took her hands in mine. "You are completely right, Mom," I said, my voice trembling with manufactured remorse. I have been so wrapped up in my own career and my own stress that I completely ignored what Chloe was going through. I was being selfish and short-sighted. I am so sorry I made you all worry about me while I was in the hospital. I am just so grateful that you took care of each other and found a way to heal while I was recovering. Please forgive me for bringing negative energy into this house after you all had such a spiritual breakthrough. The tension in the room evaporated instantly. My mother let out a loud, satisfied sigh of relief, patting my cheek as if I were a disobedient child who had finally learned her proper place in the hierarchy. "That is my good girl," she praised, her tone dripping with toxic validation. "I knew you would see reason once you calmed down. The Lord always softens a hardened heart." Chloe smiled brightly, instantly dropping the grieving mother act to admire her fresh manicure. She strutted past me, heading straight for the kitchen to pour herself a drink, acting as though she owned the very floorboards she walked on. Marcus practically deflated with relief. He shot a triumphant, knowing look at Spencer. He truly believed his gaslighting had worked flawlessly. He believed he had successfully broken my spirit, using my mother's religious guilt to secure his financial jackpot without a single consequence. He thought he was untouchable, feeling completely invincible. Marcus took off his tailored linen jacket and tossed it casually over the back of my cream-colored accent chair. He then grabbed his heavy leather briefcase, the one he always kept locked with a complex combination code, and threw it carelessly onto the center of the sofa. He was so high on his own perceived genius, so completely relaxed by my total submission, that he forgot to engage the brass clasps. The briefcase landed hard, bouncing against the cushions and popping open just an inch. Through that narrow gap, I saw the unmistakable wooden handle of a heavy custom-made notary stamp, the exact stamp used to validate my forged signature on the medical power of attorney. I kept my warm, apologetic smile perfectly fixed on my face, watching as Marcus walked into the kitchen to join Chloe, leaving the literal instrument of his federal crime sitting completely unguarded in my living room. I left the heavy custom notary stamp exactly where it was. I did not reach for it. I did not take a picture of it. A seasoned fraud investigator knows that preserving the natural habitat of a criminal is absolutely essential for the final trap. Touching it would have alerted him. Instead, I walked right past the sofa and joined my family in the kitchen, acting as though I had not just seen the murder weapon that killed my financial security. By the time our traditional Sunday dinner rolled around, Marcus was riding so high on his own perceived brilliance that he practically strutted into our formal dining room. If you are watching me right now, imagine the camera moving in a slow, continuous tracking shot, circling my massive 12-seat mahogany dining table. The camera glides past the crystal wine glasses, the steaming platters of glazed ham, baked macaroni and cheese, and collard greens, capturing every single fake smile and arrogant glance in the room. This was a weekly ritual for my family. After Pastor Silas delivered his fiery Sunday morning sermon, we would all gather at my house to feast. But today, the atmosphere was thick with a toxic, suffocating, triumphant energy. My father stood at the head of the table, adjusting his tailored church suit. He raised his hands to deliver the blessing over the food, but as always, the prayer quickly morphed into a public relations speech. Lord, we thank you for this bountiful harvest. He began, his deep, booming pastor voice echoing off my vaulted ceilings. But most of all, we thank you for the incredible blessings you have bestowed upon our family this week. We thank you for Spencer. The camera tracked slowly behind my father, capturing Spencer sitting next to Chloe. Spencer puffed out his chest, looking incredibly pleased with himself. Spencer is bringing true prosperity to our community. My father continued, his eyes shining with absolute adoration for his white son-in-law. He is creating jobs. He is building futures. My white son-in-law is truly a blessing from the Lord. He is the bridge our congregation needed to reach the next level of financial grace. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my iced tea. The sheer irony of my father praising the very man who was actively conspiring to steal our historic church and bulldoze our neighborhoods was almost too bitter to swallow. Spencer was not building futures. He was digging graves for Black-owned businesses, and my father was handing him the shovel while praising God for the opportunity. Amen, my mother. Beatrice chimed in, raising her glass. She looked across the table at me, her eyes narrowing slightly. See, Nia, that is what a real partnership looks like. Spencer goes out and conquers the world, and Chloe supports him with her grace and beauty. That is how a family builds a legacy. Chloe flipped her long, perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. She was wearing a thick diamond tennis bracelet that I knew for a fact was purchased with the money Marcus had drained from my account. She leaned back in her chair, looking at me with absolute disdain. Smart women know how to let their husbands shine. Chloe sneered, her tone laced with that familiar golden child arrogance. You just bury your face in audits and risk management reports all day. No wonder Marcus is so stressed out all the time. He has to carry the emotional weight of this entire marriage because you are too busy trying to be a corporate boss. You really should learn how to be a real wife, Nia. Look at how your career nearly killed you. You literally had a heart attack because you refused to just let a man lead. Marcus sat next to me, solemnly cutting his ham. He actually had the audacity to let out a deep, long-suffering sigh, as if Chloe had just voiced the secret pain he had been carrying for years. He reached over and patted my hand, acting like the patient martyr. It is okay, Chloe, Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Nia is trying her best. The corporate world is just very demanding for a Black woman. She feels like she has to prove herself. I just wish she would let me handle the heavy lifting so she could rest. The coordinated gaslighting was breathtaking. They were sitting at the table I bought, eating the food I paid for, wearing the jewelry they stole from me, and teaming up to convince me that my ambition was a toxic disease destroying my family. Spencer chuckled, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. The camera glides to a stop over his shoulder, framing his smug, condescending expression. Well, you know how it is in the corporate world these days, Marcus Spencer said, leaning back and crossing his arms. These big financial firms have to meet their diversity quotas. They put people in these vice president roles to check a demographic box, but the actual work is just pushing paper around. It is just compliance. Real estate development, though, that requires actual grit. It takes real intelligence to negotiate zoning laws and secure municipal funding. You have to know how to play the game with the big boys. The racial microaggression hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. He was sitting in my house drinking my wine, telling me that my executive title was a diversity handout, while framing his predatory gentrification as superior intellectual work. My mother nodded in agreement, completely blind to the insult because it validated her golden child's husband. I set my glass down on the table. The camera pushes in incredibly slowly, focusing entirely on my face. I did not frown. I did not raise my voice. I let a warm, bright, genuinely enthusiastic smile spread across my face. You are absolutely right, Spencer, I said, my voice soft and melodic. Corporate compliance can be so tedious compared to what you do. Negotiating all those complex funding structures must be incredibly challenging. In fact, I heard your new Southside project is expanding faster than anyone anticipated. The dining room went completely silent. The clatter of silverware stopped. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, locking my eyes directly onto Spencer. You are buying out the entire commercial block on Main Street, right? That requires a massive influx of capital. It must be stressful managing all those shell companies and escrow accounts to get the municipal approvals. Since I just push paper around anyway, do you need me to lend a hand auditing the financials? I would hate for a small accounting error to trigger a federal bank fraud investigation right before your big launch. The reaction was instantaneous and spectacular. Spencer froze completely rigid. The piece of ham he was about to eat slid right off his fork and hit his plate with a loud, wet thud. All the color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost. His eyes darted toward Marcus wide with absolute unfiltered panic. Marcus choked on his wine, coughing violently into his napkin. He knocked his glass over, sending a dark red stain bleeding across my pristine white tablecloth. I sat back in my chair watching the red stain spread. Neither of them had ever mentioned the South Side Project to me. They had never mentioned Main Street. Those details were buried under layers of encrypted files and dummy corporations. By dropping those specific names at the Sunday dinner table, I had just casually informed them that I was inside their vault. Spencer tried to open his mouth to speak, but his jaw just worked up and down without producing a single sound. The arrogant white savior who had just been lecturing me about real estate grit was now sweating through his designer shirt, terrified of the black woman he had just insulted. He started breathing rapidly, his chest heaving as he frantically tried to calculate exactly how much I knew. The rest of the dinner was a masterclass in silent panic. Spencer excused himself before dessert, claiming a sudden migraine while Marcus practically shoved me up the stairs the moment the front door closed behind my parents. He gripped my upper arm tightly, his fingers digging into my skin, dragging me into our master bedroom and slamming the heavy oak door shut behind us. If you are watching this scene unfold, picture the camera completely shifting its style. The smooth gliding shots are gone. The camera is handheld now, slightly shaky, moving erratically to capture the sudden claustrophobic chaos of the room. It mirrors the erratic pounding of a heart, the sheer unpredictable violence of a cornered animal. Marcus paced the length of our bedroom, breathing heavily. He ran his hands over his freshly shaved head, pacing back and forth in front of the bay windows. I stood by the foot of the bed, massaging my arm where he had grabbed me, playing the part of the confused and physically exhausted wife. He suddenly stopped pacing and turned to me, his face twisting into an expression of deep manufactured sorrow. Nia, he started, his voice dropping an octave, wrapping me in that familiar suffocating blanket of fake concern. Baby, you are scaring me. You are scaring the entire family. What was that downstairs? Why are you trying to pick fights with Spencer over real estate when you should be resting? I looked down at the floor, keeping my posture submissive. I was just making conversation, Marcus. I thought we were all sharing our professional interests. He let out a sharp, frustrated exhale, crossing the room and placing his hands heavily on my shoulders. You are not thinking clearly, Nia. The doctors warned me about this. They said the trauma to your heart from the Takotsubo could affect your cognitive function. You are paranoid. You are lashing out at the people who love you most. Your mother was in tears when she left. I cannot keep watching you destroy yourself like this. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded legal document, smoothing it out on the glass surface of my vanity table. He uncapped a luxury fountain pen and held it out to me. I had my lawyer draft this up yesterday. He said, his tone entirely too casual for what he was demanding. It is just a family wealth management transfer. It temporarily assigns your voting rights and financial access over to me until you are medically cleared by a psychiatrist. I am going to take the burden off your shoulders, baby. You just need to sign right here so I can protect our assets while you heal your mind. I stared at the paper. It was a complete surrender of my entire estate. It gave him unchecked legal authority to drain every single account, liquidate my corporate stock options, and transfer my blind trusts directly into his name. It was the final nail in the coffin he was building for me. Marcus, I cannot sign this, I said, my voice intentionally wavering. I manage risk for a living. I cannot just sign over my entire financial portfolio without having my own legal counsel review the terms. The loving husband mask vanished so fast it was terrifying. The shift was instantaneous. Marcus slammed his fist onto the vanity, shattering a crystal perfume bottle. Shards of glass exploded across the carpet. I flinched backward, letting out a genuine-sounding gasp of fear. You do not manage anything, he roared, his voice echoing off the bedroom walls. The handheld camera jerks following his sudden violent movement. You are a sick, unstable woman who just spent 3 days in a coma. You are losing your mind, Nia. You are hallucinating conspiracies about my business. You are attacking your own family at the dinner table. You are not a vice president right now. You are a liability. He stepped closer, backing me into the heavy wooden bedpost. His physical presence was entirely threatening, using his size to shrink my space. He pointed a finger directly in my face. You think you are so smart. He spat, saliva flying from his lips. You think you can talk down to me in my own house. I am the head of this family. I am the man of this house. Your father sees it. Your mother sees it. Everyone sees how completely deranged you have become since you got out of that hospital bed. I was trying to do this the nice way, Nia. I was trying to protect your dignity. I kept my eyes wide, my breathing shallow and erratic. What are you talking about, Marcus? Please, you are scaring me. I have medical power of attorney, he hissed, backing me further into the corner. Do you understand what that means? It means the state recognizes me as your primary caregiver. If you refuse to sign this transfer tonight, I will call the hospital right now. I will tell them you are experiencing severe paranoid delusions and aggressive behavioral swings. I will tell them you are a danger to yourself and to me. I will have you involuntarily committed to a psychiatric ward for a 72-hour hold. Do you want to go back to a sterile room, Nia? Do you want to be strapped to a bed while I drain your accounts legally because the court deems you mentally unfit? How was weaponizing the very culture of our community. He knew that for a black woman in corporate America, a psychiatric hold would be a career death sentence. It would validate every racist and sexist stereotype about the angry, unstable black woman that my colleagues whispered behind closed doors. He was using my reputation, my hard-earned respect, as a hostage. I let my knees buckle slightly, sliding down the bedpost until I was sitting on the edge of the mattress. I brought my trembling hands up to my face, letting a few strategic tears spill over my eyelashes. Please, Marcus, I sobbed, my voice cracking perfectly. Please do not send me back to the hospital. I cannot go back there. The food, the smell, the monitors. Please, I will do whatever you want. Just do not lock me away. Marcus towered over me, looking incredibly satisfied. The violent rage immediately smoothed back out into his arrogant, triumphant smirk. That is all I am asking for, baby, he said softly, reaching down to stroke my hair. He genuinely thought he had broken me. He thought his psychological warfare had completely shattered my defenses. Just be a good wife. Let your husband take care of the heavy lifting. He picked up the document and the pen from the vanity and placed them on a hardcover book, handing them down to me. Sign the paper, Nia. I took the pen, my hand shaking so violently that the metal clicked against the book cover. I sniffled, wiping my nose with the back of my hand. I stared at the signature line, letting my hesitation drag out for 5 agonizing seconds just to feed his ego. Then I pressed the pen to the paper and signed my full legal name. Marcus snatched the paper from my hands before the ink was even dry. He looked at the signature, checking it against the printed name to ensure it was perfectly legible. A massive grin broke out across his face. You made the right choice, baby, he said, folding the document and sliding it carefully into his inner jacket pocket. I am going to go put this in the safe downstairs. You just get some rest. You look exhausted. He turned his back on me and walked out of the bedroom, pulling the door shut behind him. The click of the latch echoed in the silent room. The moment the door closed, the shaking in my hands stopped entirely. The tears instantly dried. The terrified posture of a broken wife vanished, replaced by the razor-sharp posture of a predator. I stood up from the bed, brushing a speck of dust off my trousers. Marcus thought he had just secured his ultimate victory. He thought he had bullied me into signing away my entire financial empire. But Marcus was a small-time hustler playing a game he did not understand. He did not realize that the expensive fountain pen I had just used, the one I had deliberately left on the vanity for him to offer me, was not a standard luxury pen. That pen contained specially formulated micro-encapsulated ink designed specifically for high-level forensic banking operations. The ink embedded an invisible, unique alphanumeric barcode into the paper fibers upon contact. Furthermore, the way I signed the document utilizing a specific staggered pressure technique known to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, confirmed that the signature was extracted under extreme duress and physical threat. I thought he had a binding contract. What he actually had sitting right inside his jacket pocket was a federally mandated tracking beacon. The moment he presented that document to any financial institution, the hidden barcode would trigger an automatic silent alarm directly to the Federal Wire Fraud Division. He was going to walk into a bank expecting to walk out a millionaire, and instead he was going to walk straight into a set of federal handcuffs. I walked over to the shattered glass on the carpet, looking down at the mess he made. He was so proud of his manipulation. I smiled, adjusting the collar of my shirt. The final trap was armed. Let him think he won the battle. I was about to win the entire war. If you were tracking my movements the very next morning, you would see a sweeping tracking shot gliding sideways past the floor-to-ceiling glass walls of a skyscraper conference room. The entire city below was bathed in the harsh slate gray and icy blue tones of a merciless winter dawn. The warmth of my suburban home, the fake smiles of my family, the golden lighting of my Sunday dining room, all of it was stripped away in this sterile corporate altitude. This was a room designed for pure, unadulterated consequence. I sat perfectly upright at the center of a massive marble table wearing a razor-sharp charcoal suit. My private wealth attorney, Sterling, sat to my left, while Special Agent Davis from the Federal Bureau of Investigation Financial Crimes Division sat directly across from me. I reached into my leather briefcase and placed a heavy encrypted hard drive directly in the center of the cold marble. Beside it, I placed a thick physical binder containing every single wire transfer property deed and Shadow Corporation registry I had spent the last 48 hours compiling. The trap was successfully triggered at exactly 9 in the morning, I stated, keeping my voice as devoid of emotion as the steel beams holding up the building. My husband Marcus walked into a federal credit union downtown and presented a forged medical power of attorney. The document was signed using a forensic tracking ink pen. The moment the teller scanned that document into their database, the hidden alphanumeric barcode alerted your cyber division. You have him on camera committing federal identity theft and bank fraud. Agent Davis, a stern man who rarely broke his professional facade, opened a thick file folder of his own. He slid a glossy 8x10 surveillance photograph across the table. It showed Marcus standing at a bank teller window looking incredibly smug, handing over the very document I had pretended to sign in tears just 12 hours prior. We have him, Nia, Agent Davis confirmed. The timestamp on the document scan matches your alert. But we are looking at a much larger ecosystem of corruption here. We spent the night verifying the data packets you sent over regarding your brother-in-law. Spencer has been running a highly sophisticated racketeering operation under the guise of an urban renewal initiative. The $2 million Marcus drained from your personal accounts was indeed funneled straight into Spencer's holding company. I folded my hands, resting them on the cool table. And the collateral, I asked. Attorney Sterling adjusted his glasses, projecting a digital map onto the glass wall of the conference room. The map highlighted the historical Southside District, the vibrant beating heart of our Black community. A massive red perimeter outlined the entire Main Street commercial block. Spencer needed a massive line of credit to secure the permits and finalize the buyout of the Southside District, Sterling explained, pointing to the red lines. No legitimate bank would underwrite a project of this scale for a developer with his specific history of defaulted loans. He needed a guarantor with massive community trust and spotless institutional credit. He used your parents' church. Pastor Silas and Beatrice signed a blind commercial pledge. They essentially handed over the deed to the church sanctuary, the community center, and the adjoining school building as collateral to underwrite Spencer's luxury condo development. Agent Davis leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. The weight of his next words shifted the entire atmosphere of the room, plunging it into an even deeper freeze. Nia, we have enough evidence right here to execute a multi-agency raid, Davis said, his eyes locking onto mine to ensure I understood the sheer gravity of what was about to happen. But as your liaison, I need to make this absolutely clear to you before I sign off on these warrants. If we pull this trigger, the fallout will be catastrophic for your blood relatives. The moment we freeze Spencer's holding accounts, he will default on the municipal loan. The bank will immediately seize the church. Your parents will lose their congregation, their livelihood, and their entire social standing by Monday morning. Spencer will face up to 20 years in a federal penitentiary. Your sister will lose everything she owns. We are talking about the total public annihilation of your family. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed? I looked at the map glowing on the glass wall. I looked at the red lines drawing a border around the neighborhoods where I grew up, where hard-working Black families had spent generations building businesses, homes, and sanctuaries. My parents were supposed to be the shepherds of that flock. Instead, they had sold the sheep to the slaughter just to finance the ego of their golden child's white husband. I turned my gaze back to Agent Davis. My voice did not shake, my heart rate did not spike. Spencer does not represent my community. I said the words cutting through the quiet room like a blade. He is a parasite. He uses my family's racial identity and my father's religious influence as a shield to gentrify our neighborhoods and displace our people. My parents chose to be his willing accomplices because they value proximity to his affluent white circles more than they value their own flesh and blood. They mortgaged the house of God to fund a thief. I do not care about their social standing, and I do not care about their public embarrassment. Prepare the arrest warrants. I want them executed this Saturday night during Spencer's massive Southside Project launch gala. I want them taken out in front of the very politicians and investors they are trying to impress. Agent Davis slowly nodded, closing the file containing the real estate documents. He respected the absolute finality in my tone. But instead of concluding the meeting, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a separate, tightly sealed manila envelope. The seal bore the distinct red insignia of a medical forensics laboratory. "There is one more thing we need to discuss," Nia Davis said, and for the first time since I met him, his voice carried a trace of genuine hesitation. "When you initiated this investigation, you asked us to run a full background sweep on Marcus's recent financial activities, focusing on the weeks immediately preceding your cardiac event." "Yes," I replied, a sudden cold knot forming in the pit of my stomach. "I assumed he was siphoning cash to pay for the yacht package." How was Davis confirmed? But he was also preparing for a much larger payout. 5 days before you collapsed in your office, Marcus finalized a new life insurance policy. It is a premium expedited policy with a massive payout clause. $5 million. He named himself as the sole irrevocable beneficiary. The air in the room suddenly felt incredibly thin. I stared at the manila envelope, my analytical mind racing to process this new variable. People buy life insurance policies every day, but the timing was a glaring red flag. "Are you suggesting my heart attack was convenient timing?" I asked, keeping my posture perfectly still. Agent Davis slowly opened the envelope, sliding a multi-page medical report across the marble table toward me. "I am suggesting it was not a natural medical event at all, Nia. When we saw the $5 million policy, we subpoenaed your initial blood work and toxicology screens from the hospital admission. The hospital coded your collapse as Takotsubo cardiomyopathy caused by extreme stress. The symptoms are virtually identical to a massive heart attack. But our federal toxicologists found an anomaly the hospital scanners missed." I looked down at the highlighted text on the laboratory report. The medical jargon blurred for a second before snapping into sharp, terrifying focus. "Your blood showed trace amounts of a highly synthesized digitalis derivative." Davis explained, his voice grim. "It is a compound typically used to treat severe heart arrhythmias, but administered to a healthy person in a concentrated covert dose. It induces violent cardiac failure. It simulates a stress-induced heart attack, perfectly, leaving almost no trace after 48 hours. The room went completely silent. The hum of the city traffic far below the glass windows faded into nothing. "Marcus did not just want to empty your bank accounts," Nia Sterling added gently. "He knew you would eventually discover the missing funds. He knew you would catch him. He did not just want your money. He wanted the $5 million payout, and he needed you permanently silenced to get it. Your husband poisoned you." I sat absolutely motionless, staring at the medical report. The puzzle pieces violently slammed into place, the sudden bitter taste in my morning coffee the day I collapsed. Marcus insisting on making my breakfast that entire week, playing the role of the doting husband. The fact that he did not visit me in the hospital because he was likely terrified I might wake up and realize what he had done. The luxury cruise was not just a vacation, it was his celebration. He genuinely believed he had successfully murdered me and gotten away with it. A profound, chilling darkness washed over my soul. This was no longer just about financial fraud or gentrification. This was about a man who looked me in the eye, kissed my forehead, and fed me poison so he could buy designer watches and sail the Caribbean with my sister. I closed the medical folder and slid it back across the table. I looked at Agent Davis, the reflection of the city skyline gleaming in my eyes. Saturday night, I whispered, my voice barely recognizable even to myself. Do whatever it takes to lock down the perimeter of that gala. Nobody leaves that ballroom until I'm finished with them. If you were filming this moment, you would place the camera right behind my mother, right over her rigid shoulder. You would focus the lens squarely on my face, capturing the exact moment my quiet corporate sanctuary was violated. Through this blurred silhouette of my mother Beatrice, you would see me sitting behind a massive slab of polished obsidian desk. My assistant tried to intercept them, but my mother and my sister simply shoved past her. They brought the chaotic, toxic energy of a reality television show straight into the sterile, high-stakes environment of my financial firm. Chloe collapsed into one of my Italian leather guest chairs. She was wearing designer sunglasses indoors, clutching a crumpled tissue to her face, and performing a masterful display of manufactured hysterics. She sobbed loudly, ensuring every junior analyst walking past the glass walls of my office could hear her performance. My mother stood towering over my desk. She was wearing her Sunday finest on a Tuesday, her signature floral perfume completely overpowering the subtle scent of espresso in my office. "Now you need to fix this right now," my mother demanded, slamming her expensive handbag onto my desk. She did not ask how I was feeling after checking out of the hospital against medical advice. She did not ask if my heart was holding up. She went straight to the only thing that mattered to her. Chloe is facing eviction at her current storefront, and she needs a new commercial lease immediately to keep up appearances for Spencer and his investors. The bank is refusing to underwrite the new location because of some minor credit issues. You are going to co-sign the commercial lease for her today. I kept my hands folded neatly on top of my desk. Minor credit issues, I repeated, my voice perfectly level. Mom, Chloe has maxed out 6 different business credit cards and defaulted on 3 merchant loans. Her fashion brand is a financial black hole. Co-signing a lease for her is financial suicide. Chloe let out a loud, theatrical wail, burying her face in her hands. "You see, Mom," she cried, her voice muffled by the tissue. "She hates me. She has always hated me. She just wants to see me fail so she can look down on me from her fancy glass office. I just had a miscarriage and my husband is stressed out of his mind trying to build housing for our community. The least my own flesh and blood could do is help me secure a tiny retail space so I can maintain my sanity." I looked at my sister. She did not shed a single real tear. Her eyes were completely dry behind those oversized sunglasses. She was using a fabricated miscarriage to guilt-trip me into subsidizing a vanity project she had absolutely no intention of running properly. My mother stepped closer, leaning over my desk to invade my personal space. The camera stays locked on my calm expression, framed by my mother's aggressive posture. "You listen to me," Nia Beatrice hissed, pointing a perfectly manicured finger directly at my face. "You are the older sister. We raised you. We put clothes on your back and a roof over your head. We supported you when you were nothing. And now that you sit up here in this glass tower, acting like you are better than the people who gave you life, you think you can just turn your back on your own sister." I did not break eye contact. "Mom, I paid for my own college tuition with academic scholarships," I said smoothly. "I built my career while you and Dad drained my savings to pay for Chloe's lavish wedding. I have given this family enough." Beatrice slammed her hands flat on the obsidian surface of my desk. "You have given nothing but attitude and disrespect," she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "You are a bitter, jealous woman because you cannot keep your own husband happy. But hear me clearly right now. If you do not sign this commercial lease guarantee today, your father will stand at the pulpit this coming Sunday." He will take the microphone in front of our entire congregation and he will tell 5,000 people that our eldest daughter has turned her back on her family. He will announce that you are a selfish, ungrateful woman who abandoned her grieving sister in her hour of need. The threat hung heavily in the cold air of my office. For a Black family deeply entrenched in the mega-church community, this was the ultimate nuclear option. My parents held massive social capital. If Pastor Silas denounced me from the pulpit, I would be instantly excommunicated from the community I grew up in. My name would be dragged through the mud at every Sunday dinner, every choir practice, and every community board meeting in the city. They were weaponizing the house of God to extort a commercial real estate signature. You would destroy my reputation in our community over a boutique lease, I asked, keeping my tone soft, playing the role of the wounded daughter perfectly. I will do whatever it takes to protect my family, Beatrice replied, without a single ounce of hesitation, completely blind to the irony that I was supposed to be her family too. You will have no place in our community, Nia. Respect you. No one will do business with you. You will be a complete outcast. Now sign the paper. She pulled a thick stack of legal documents from her handbag and threw them aggressively onto my desk. She tossed a pen right on top of the pile. I looked down at the documents. They were standard commercial guarantor forms for a premium retail space in the downtown arts district. The rent was astronomical. Chloe had absolutely no way of generating the revenue to cover it. The moment she defaulted, the landlords would immediately come after the guarantor for the full value of the 5-year lease. It was a massive financial trap. But as I stared at the signature line, a brilliant, cold satisfaction washed over my entire body. My mother thought she was backing me into a corner. She thought she was using public humiliation to break my spirit. She had no idea she was simply handing me the exact ammunition I needed to accelerate their total destruction. I let a look of absolute defeat cross my face. I let my shoulders slump forward, mirroring the posture of a woman who had just been completely broken by the weight of her mother's rejection. "Okay, Mom," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "You win. Please do not have Dad say those things about me at church. I will sign the lease for Chloe." Chloe instantly stopped her fake crying. She sat up straight in the leather chair, pulling down her sunglasses to watch me. A massive, triumphant smirk spread across her face. My mother let out a loud, arrogant sigh of relief, crossing her arms over her chest. "I told you she would see reason," Chloe Beatrice said, looking down at me with absolute contempt. "She just needs to be reminded of her place sometimes." I picked up the pen. I did not use my personal legal name. I did not use my personal social security number. Instead, I filled out the guarantor section using the corporate identification number of a highly insulated shell company I had established years ago for covert forensic investigations. The company was legally registered under the Vanguard Trust Network. By signing this document under the Vanguard Trust umbrella, I was technically providing the guarantee, but the moment Chloe defaulted on this lease, the creditors would not be able to touch a single penny of my personal wealth. Instead, the debt would automatically route to the primary holding account of Vanguard Trust. And the primary holding account of Vanguard Trust was currently holding the deed to my parents' megachurch. I was tying Chloe's inevitable bankruptcy directly to the very building my parents were trying to protect. They were literally co-signing their own eviction. I finished signing the last page and pushed the stack of documents across the desk. Chloe snatched them up so fast, she nearly tore the paper. She stood up, smoothing down her designer dress, her fake tears completely forgotten. "Thanks, Nia," Chloe said, her voice dripping with sugary condescension. "See, this is what happens when you finally act like a supportive sister. Maybe if you learned how to be this accommodating at home, Marcus would not look so stressed out all the time." My mother grabbed her handbag, adjusting her posture to radiate total superiority. "Let this be a lesson to you," Nia Beatrice said coldly. "You can have all the fancy corporate titles in the world, but you will never outgrow your obligations to this family. Do not make me threaten you again." They turned their backs on me and marched out of my executive suite, the glass doors swinging shut behind them. They left my office feeling like absolute conquerors. They thought they had successfully terrorized me into submission. They thought their social leverage was an unbeatable weapon. I sat alone in the quiet hum of my office. The facade of the broken, intimidated daughter melted away instantly. I leaned back in my leather chair, swiveling slightly to face the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. I reached over and picked up my encrypted smartphone from the charging dock. I opened my secure administrative portal. I navigated directly to the municipal escrow accounts tied to Spencer's massive Southside gentrification project. The $2 million Marcus stole from me was sitting in that account, acting as the primary liquidity required to keep Spencer's municipal permits active. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. My mother wanted to use her power to destroy my standing in the community. She wanted to threaten my peace. I smiled, pressing my thumb against the biometric sensor on my phone. I authorized the immediate freeze and total clawback of the Vanguard Trust liquidity pool. I pressed confirm. The digital wheels locked instantly. With a single tap of my finger, I just froze every single payment account connected to the Southside project. I cut off the oxygen to Spencer's entire development. Any checks he had written to contractors today would bounce immediately. The city would revoke his construction permits by tomorrow morning for lack of funds. The banks would instantly trigger the default clauses on his collateral, putting my parents' church directly on the chopping block. "Enjoy your new boutique, Chloe," I whispered into the empty room, setting my phone face down on the obsidian desk. The demolition has officially begun. Imagine a split-screen sequence, accelerating in real time, capturing the exact minute the financial guillotine drops on my enemies. On the left side of your screen is Spencer sitting inside his minimalist glass-walled office, overlooking the very neighborhoods he plans to destroy. He is furiously clicking his mouse, his face bathed in the harsh red glow of his dual monitors. The $2 million in escrow, the lifeblood of his entire municipal gentrification project, has simply vanished. The digital ledger shows a devastating zero balance. A notification pops up stating the transfer was intercepted and permanently frozen by a senior holding entity called Vanguard Trust. Spencer slams his fists onto his custom glass desk with such force that his coffee mug shatters, spilling dark liquid across his architectural blueprints. He picks up his phone, screaming at his prime broker, demanding to know who runs Vanguard Trust. But the broker is stammering, offering absolutely no answers. The shell company is a legal fortress, impossible to penetrate without a federal warrant. Without that liquidity pool. Spencer knows his construction crews are walking off the job today. The city inspectors are revoking his zoning permits by sundown. Spencer realizes he is financially bleeding to death, and he cannot even see the sniper who fired the shot. Now look at the right side of your screen. Cut across the city to the extravagant pastoral office of my father, Silas. The camera captures the precise moment his prestigious legacy crumbles into dust. A process server has just handed him a thick stack of certified legal documents directly from the Central Commercial Banking Authority. Silas drops the heavy manila envelope onto his plush carpet, his hands shaking violently. Beatrice stands beside him, her perfectly applied church makeup paling as she reads the bold printed foreclosure notice over his shoulder. The bank is officially seizing the church sanctuary, the massive fellowship hall, and the attached private academy. Due to a catastrophic default on the blind commercial pledge, the entire property is scheduled for public auction. My parents mortgaged the spiritual home of thousands of hardworking Black families to fund a white developer, and now the bank is coming to collect. Beatrice grabs her phone, dialing Spencer with frantic, trembling fingers. The call goes straight to voicemail. She dials again, tears of sheer panic welling in her eyes. Voicemail again. Spencer is sitting in his shattered office watching his caller identification flash with my parents' names, and he is aggressively hitting the ignore button. I used their Black congregation to secure his white wealth, and now that the ship is actively sinking, he is throwing the pastor right overboard without a second thought. In the background of my parents' office, Chloe is sobbing uncontrollably because the contractors for her new high-end boutique just packed up their tools and drove away laughing at her bounced checks. The entire family is drowning and nobody knows how to swim. Cut sharply to Marcus. He is standing at the polished checkout counter of an exclusive luxury car dealership, completely oblivious to the chaos consuming the rest of the family. He is trying to put a massive down payment on a customized sports car using my Black American Express card. He slides the heavy metal card across the counter, flashing a bright, arrogant smile at the salesman, fully playing the role of the self-made millionaire. The salesman runs the card through the terminal. The machine emits a harsh, jarring denial tone. Marcus laughs nervously, adjusting his designer jacket, telling the man the magnetic strip must be dirty and to try it again. The salesman swipes it a second time. Declined. Code 05. Account frozen due to suspected federal wire fraud. Marcus snatches the card back, his heart suddenly hammering violently against his ribs. The smug facade melts away instantly. He pulls out his smartphone, frantically trying to log into his primary investment portal. Access denied. He tries the joint checking account. Access denied. He attempts to log into the offshore crypto wallets he funded with my salary. Access completely revoked. The invisible walls of his financial prison are slamming shut, trapping him inside. Marcus sprints to his vehicle, ignoring the confused salesman calling after him. He speeds through the city streets, running red lights, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turn white. Panic is a feral animal tearing through his chest. He is convinced I must have discovered the credit card charge from the cruise. He plans to manipulate me again, to use his aggressive gaslighting tactics, to force me to unlock the accounts the moment he gets through the front door. He pulls into our driveway, tires screeching loudly against the pavement, leaving thick black skid marks. He leaves the car door wide open and sprints up the front steps, fumbling with his keys. He barges into the house, screaming my name, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. The silence that greets him is absolute and terrifying. He runs up the floating staircase, taking the steps two at a time, and bursts into our master bedroom. He stops dead in his tracks, his chest heaving. The room looks perfectly normal at first glance. The bed is made. My everyday clothes are still hanging neatly in the closet. My makeup is still sitting on the vanity. But Marcus is a predator, and predators notice the subtle, terrifying absences. He walks slowly toward the abstract painting hiding my biometric safe. The heavy canvas is swung wide open. The steel door of the safe is unlocked and completely emptied of every single encrypted hard drive and sensitive document. He rushes to the walk-in closet, checking the hidden floor panel. My passports are gone. The vintage jewelry inherited from my grandmother is gone. The birth certificates, social security cards, and irreplaceable heirlooms have vanished into thin air. I did not leave a dramatic, angry letter on the bed. I did not smash his belongings or cut up his suits. I simply evaporated, leaving him standing in a house that was about to become an active federal crime scene. Marcus is hyperventilating now. He stumbles backwards, sitting heavily on the edge of the mattress, pulling desperately at his shirt collar as the realization hits him with the force of a freight train. I do not just know about the cruise, I know everything. Suddenly, the sharp, high-pitched chime of the front doorbell echoes through the empty house. Marcus jumps, his adrenaline spiking to dangerous levels. He creeps down the stairs, looking through the security camera monitor mounted in the hallway. A private courier wearing a completely blank uniform is walking back to an unmarked delivery van, leaving a small, pristine white box squarely on the welcome mat. Marcus opens the front door, looking frantically up and down the quiet suburban street. He picks up the white box. It is unusually heavy, wrapped perfectly without a single return address or shipping label. He carries it to the kitchen and, grabbing a sharp paring knife to slice through the thick packing tape. His hands are shaking so badly he nearly drops the blade. He pulls open the cardboard flaps. Inside, resting on a bed of deep black velvet, is a small, clear medical vial. Marcus stares at the vial, the remaining blood draining entirely from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. It is a highly synthesized digitalis derivative. It is the exact, undetectable, heart-stopping poison he had covertly slipped into my morning coffee right before I collapsed in my office. He thought he had disposed of the evidence perfectly. He thought he had committed the flawless murder. And now the very poison he used to trigger my cardiac failure is sitting right on his kitchen counter, gleaming under the pendant lights. Tucked underneath the glass vial is a thick piece of premium cardstock. Marcus pulls the card out, his breathing shallow and rapid. There are no threats written on the paper. There are no demands for a divorce or screaming accusations. There is only a single line of text printed in sharp, elegant black ink. See you at the gala on Saturday. Marcus drops the card, the heavy paper fluttering to the marble floor. He stumbles backward, hitting the stainless steel refrigerator, grabbing his chest as a genuine panic attack takes hold of his body. The Black Excellence Gala is Spencer and Chloe's massive fundraising event scheduled for this weekend. It is the exact high society event where they plan to announce their fraudulent real estate project to the entire city. My parents will be there dressed to the nines, smiling for the local press cameras. Spencer will be there shaking hands with politicians and investors. And Marcus knows with absolute horrifying certainty that I will be there too, holding the match that will burn their entire empire to the ground. If you were directing this exact moment, your camera would start at the very bottom of my blood-red stiletto heels. The lens would slowly track upward, moving in a smooth, deliberate glide over the sharp, dangerous slit of my custom-tailored crimson evening gown. It would capture the structured silk bodice, the diamonds resting cold against my collarbone, and finally stop squarely on my face. My reflection in the full-length mirror stares back at me with absolute lethal precision. My makeup is flawless. Red lips, sharp contour, and a gaze completely devoid of mercy. This is not just a dress. This is war armor. Tonight is the Black Excellence Gala. It is a high society charity event hosted by my sister Chloe and her white husband Spencer. It is their desperate, arrogant attempt to secure political backing and attract silent investors for the very real estate project I just financially decapitated. They are throwing a massive, lavish party on a ship that is already sitting at the bottom of the ocean. I step out of my chauffeured town car and walk into the grand ballroom of the downtown Plaza Hotel. The room is an overwhelming display of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden light over towering floral arrangements and the elite members of our community. City council members, prominent Black business owners, and wealthy megachurch leaders are all sipping expensive champagne and exchanging business cards. Spencer is working the room playing the ultimate white savior. He is shaking hands with Black politicians, smiling brightly, pretending he is not actively displacing our people for a quick profit. Chloe is glued to his side, wearing an elaborate sparkling silver dress, clutching a champagne flute. She is performing the role of the visionary founder, masking the absolute panic of her bounced checks and her freshly evicted storefront. I scan the room and spot my parents, Pastor Silas and Beatrice. The sight of them almost makes me laugh out loud. They are standing near the main ice sculpture, trying desperately to project their usual holy authority. But if you look closely, their terrified reality is bleeding through the cracks. My father is sweating profusely through his tailored church suit, dabbing his forehead with a silk handkerchief every 2 minutes. My mother is gripping her clutch so hard her knuckles are stark white. They received the foreclosure notice for the church just hours ago. They are standing in a room full of their loyal congregation, knowing they have secretly gambled away the very sanctuary these people pray in. They are trying to smile, but their eyes are completely hollow with fear. They are waiting for Spencer to save them, completely unaware that Spencer is bleeding out financially. I take a deep, steadying breath and step fully into the light of the ballroom. The crimson fabric of my gown flows behind me like a river of blood against the sea of boring black tuxedos and muted cocktail dresses. The effect is instantaneous and deeply satisfying. Conversations simply stop. Heads turn in my direction. The elite crowd naturally parts for me as I walk toward the center of the room. I am not the quiet, exhausted corporate workhorse my family expects me to be. I am a predator walking confidently into my hunting ground. I see Chloe notice me from across the room. Her fake camera-ready smile shatters instantly. The absolute fury of being upstaged at her own vanity event twists her features into a bitter scowl. She glares at my dress, her silver gown suddenly looking cheap and inadequate in comparison. She thought she was the star of the night, but I just stole her entire audience without saying a single word. Before I can even reach the bar, a hand grabs my elbow with a desperate, frantic grip. I turn sharply. It is Marcus. He looks absolutely atrocious. His eyes are bloodshot, his designer tuxedo looks slightly rumpled, and he is sweating through his expensive collar. He drags me into a secluded alcove behind a massive column of white roses. He looks like a cornered rat looking for a way to escape a sinking ship. Nia, he breathes his voice, a frantic, terrified whisper. Nia, please, you have to listen to me right now. That box you left at the house, that package, I can explain everything. I swear to you, it is not what you think it is. You are misunderstanding the entire situation. I look at him, my expression perfectly blank. Explain what, Marcus, I ask, my voice incredibly smooth and calm. Explain why a highly synthesized digitalis derivative was sitting on our kitchen counter. Or explain why you forged a medical power of attorney to drain my primary checking account while I was lying in a coma fighting for my life. He swallows hard, his Adam apple bobbing nervously. He tries to reach for my hands, but I step back out of his reach. Baby, that vial was just a dietary supplement, he stammers, trying to build a defense out of thin air. I bought it online to help with your heart health. I was researching alternative medicines to help you recover faster. I was only trying to save your life. And the bank accounts. I was just moving the funds to a high-yield savings account to protect our assets from the hospital billing department. You are misinterpreting my intentions. I am your husband. I love you. You have to believe me, Nia. We can fix this right now. Just unlock the accounts and we can go home and talk about this like rational adults. The desperation is pathetic and insulting. He fed me poison and now he wants me to believe it was a vitamin. He wants me to hand him the keys back to my wealth so he can finish the job he started. I lean in close to his ear. My voice drops to a deadly quiet tone, ensuring he hears every single syllable. Marcus, I am a forensic fraud investigator, I whisper. I track international cartels and corporate embezzlement for a living. Do you honestly think I cannot trace a $5 million life insurance policy? Do you really believe I do not know exactly what you poured into my coffee last Tuesday morning? Marcus freezes entirely. The air leaves his lungs in a sharp, jagged gasp. The realization that his murder plot is completely exposed hits him with full force. He backs away from me, his hands shaking violently against his sides. You are crazy, he stammers, his voice cracking. You are a crazy woman. You have no proof of any of this. Nobody is going to believe you. I have everything I need, I say, taking a slow sip from a glass of champagne a passing waiter just handed me. Now wipe the sweat off your face, Marcus. You are embarrassing yourself in front of my parents and their wealthy friends. And I highly suggest you go find a good seat near the front. The main presentation is about to begin. I walk away from him, leaving him paralyzed in the shadowed alcove. A loud chime echoes through the ballroom, signaling the start of the main event. The crowd begins to gather around the grand stage at the front of the hall. Spencer strides confidently up the steps, approaching the heavy, clear acrylic podium. He adjusts the microphone, flashing his brilliant white savior smile to the audience. My parents shuffle to the front row, forcing themselves to clap loudly, trying to pretend their world is not actively burning to ash. Chloe stands at the edge of the stage, posing for the local photographers, her chin held high. Thank you all for joining us tonight, Spencer says, his voice booming through the premium sound system. We are here to celebrate Black excellence and the future of the Southside Commercial District. I am incredibly proud to announce to this esteemed community that our revitalization project has just secured a massive $10 million institutional investment. This unprecedented funding will allow us to break ground tomorrow morning and bring massive prosperity to this historic neighborhood. The crowd erupts into applause. My father claps the loudest desperately, hoping this imaginary $10 million will somehow pay off his foreclosed church. Spencer raises a remote control, pointing it at the massive digital projector screen hanging directly behind him. He intends to show a glorious architectural rendering of his new luxury condos to secure even more donations. He presses the button confidently. The massive screen flickers to life, casting a bright light over the stage. He turns back to the cheering audience, beaming with absolute pride. He is completely unaware that I spent the last 3 hours inside the hotel audiovisual control room. He has no idea that his presentation slides have been entirely hacked by a forensic accountant. And he has absolutely no clue that what is about to appear on that 50-foot screen will send him straight to a federal prison. The image that illuminates the 50-foot screen behind Spencer is not a glorious architectural rendering of luxury condos. It is a stark, high-resolution scan of a commercial default notice overlaid with a massive red rejected stamp from the Central Banking Authority. A collective gasp ripples through the ballroom. The clinking of crystal champagne flutes stops instantly. Spencer stares at the screen, his confident white savior smile melting into an expression of sheer, unadulterated terror. He frantically mashes the button on his presentation remote, trying to advance to the next slide. The screen does not budge. The system is entirely locked out. If you are directing the camera for this moment, you need to circle me. Orbit my movements in a slow, continuous 360-degree pane as I ascend the carpeted stairs to the main stage. As my red stilettos hit the platform, the warm ambient lighting of the ballroom abruptly cuts out, replaced instantly by a harsh, icy blue spotlight that isolates Spencer and me. I do not wait for an invitation. I walk directly up to the clear acrylic podium and pry the microphone straight out of his trembling hands. Spencer tries to salvage his crumbling kingdom. He steps in front of me, attempting to block me from the audience while chuckling nervously into the silence. "Please excuse my sister-in-law, everyone," he says, his voice tight and breathless. "The open bar has been incredibly generous tonight, and she is still recovering from a severe medical episode. Her doctors warned us about cognitive confusion. Let us get you back to your seat, Nia." It is the ultimate desperate play. A mediocre white man attempting to gaslight an assertive, highly educated black woman by labeling her as drunk and mentally unstable in front of her own community. I do not back down. I step around him, commanding the absolute center of the stage. "I am completely sober, Spencer," I say, my voice ringing crystal clear through the premium sound system. "But you are about to have a very bad hangover." I pull my own master remote control from my clutch purse. I press a single button. The screen behind us flashes and a new document appears. It is a highly classified international wire transfer log. "Spencer just promised you a $10 million investment to revitalize the Southside District," I announce, looking directly at the city council members and wealthy investors sitting in the front rows. What he failed to mention is that his holding company has exactly $0 in liquid capital. He stood on this stage and told you he is building up the black community. He is lying. He is actively using my father, Pastor Silas, as a diversity shield. Spencer leveraged the demographics of our congregation to secure federal minority business grants. He took government funds meant to empower black entrepreneurs and funneled them straight into his private offshore accounts. Spencer lunges toward me, trying to grab the microphone. "Security! I need security up here right now," he yells, his voice cracking with panic. "She is experiencing a psychotic break." I effortlessly sidestep him, pressing the button on my remote again. A new ledger appears on the massive screen. This one features the unmistakable logo of a notorious underground casino syndicate based in Macau. Federal loans were not enough to feed his reckless habits. I continue, my voice slicing through the rising murmurs of the crowd. "Spencer owes $5 million to a criminal gambling syndicate operating out of Macau. He took the government loans meant for our neighborhoods and he gambled them away at the baccarat tables. When the syndicate threatened to break his legs for the unpaid debt, he needed massive collateral to secure a desperate bridge loan. He needed a pristine, debt-free asset to hand over to the bank. So he looked at the very people sitting in this room." I point directly at my parents in the front row. Pastor Silas is gripping the edge of his table, his knuckles bone white. Beatrice has a hand clamped over her mouth, her eyes wide with mounting horror. "He looked at my parents," I say, my tone dropping to a lethal calm. "And because they worshipped their proximity to his white privilege more than they worshipped their own God, they gave him exactly what he wanted." Pastor Silas and Beatrice signed a blind commercial pledge. They signed over the deed to our sanctuary. Your tithes, your weekly offerings, the historical landmark your grandparents built, brick by brick, is currently being seized by the commercial bank. Spencer bounced a $2 million check this morning, and the foreclosure was finalized 3 hours ago. You do not have a church anymore. Spencer gambled it away, and my parents handed him the chips. The ballroom explodes. The polite elite silence shatters into a deafening roar of absolute outrage. Wealthy church elders jump out of their seats, pointing furious fingers at my parents. Politicians who had just taken photo ops with Spencer are frantically calling their crisis managers. Pastor Silas drops to his knees right there on the ballroom floor, clutching his chest as the reality of his total public annihilation sets in. Beatrice wails, a high-pitched sound of pure social agony, hiding her face behind her designer clutch. The empire of holy perfection they built by exploiting my bank accounts is burning to ash in front of 500 witnesses. Suddenly, a flash of silver catches the corner of my eye. Chloe scrambles up the stage stairs, her heavy silver gown tearing as she trips over the hem. She charges toward me, her face twisted into a mask of pure feral hatred. She completely abandons the poised, elegant founder persona she had been performing all night. "You lying, jealous witch!" Chloe screams, lunging for the microphone. "You are making all of this up because you want to destroy my marriage. You have always been jealous of me. Spencer is a good man. He is a visionary. You are just a bitter corporate drone who cannot keep her own husband happy, so you are trying to ruin my life." I hold the microphone out of her reach, looking down at my younger sister with absolute disgust. The golden child is finally showing her true colors, stripped of my financial subsidies. Your good man used you as a financial human shield. Chloe, I say, my voice broadcasting her humiliation to the entire room. I reach into the inner pocket of my tailored suit jacket and pull out a thick stack of folded legal papers. These are the documents I intercepted before leaving my office. I hold them up for the crowd to see. While you were busy posting selfies on a luxury yacht using stolen money, your visionary husband was legally shifting all of his domestic corporate debt entirely into your name, I announce. I unfold the papers. I have your commercial eviction notice right here, Chloe. The contractors for your new high-end boutique packed up their tools yesterday because your checks bounced. You have maxed out 6 different business credit cards. You owe $300,000 to private merchant lenders, and Spencer cleverly made sure your personal social security number is attached to every single defaulted loan. You do not own a fashion brand. You own a financial black hole. I throw the stack of eviction notices and debt collection letters directly into the air. The harsh, icy blue spotlight catches the white papers as they flutter down, raining over Chloe, like confetti at the world's most depressing parade. She frantically drops to her knees on the stage, trying to gather the documents, trying to hide her humiliating bankruptcy from the flashing cameras of the local press. She looks at the papers, seeing the undeniable proof of her massive debt. The reality breaks her. She lets out a gut-wrenching sob, crawling towards Spencer and begging him to tell her it is a mistake. Spencer just backs away from her, looking for the nearest exit door. He does not care about his wife. He only cares about saving his own skin. The destruction is complete. The golden child is crawling on the floor, drowning in debt. The arrogant brother-in-law is exposed as a predatory gambling addict. The holy parents are humiliated and stripped of their entire religious empire. I stand at the center of the stage in my crimson dress, watching the chaos unfold, entirely untouched by the fire I just started. But the night is not over. The ultimate architect of my pain is still in the room, and he is about to face a reckoning that money cannot buy. The camera lens tightens, zooming into a sharp close-up of Marcus. His handsome, carefully crafted features contort into a mask of pure, unhinged rage. He cannot stand the humiliation. He cannot process that his perfect financial crime is unraveling on a 50-foot screen in front of the city elite. He charges up the stage stairs, taking them 2 at a time. "You are a crazy woman," he roars, his voice cracking with absolute desperation. He lunges forward, raising his hand to strike me right across the face in front of 500 people. If you are watching, the frame cuts rapidly between his furious, sweaty face and my perfectly calm expression. I do not flinch. I do not scream. I simply pivot on my red stiletto heel, shifting my weight backward with practiced precision. Marcus swipes at empty air, his momentum carrying him forward until he stumbles and crashes to his knees against the hard acrylic podium. He looks incredibly small, kneeling there on the stage. "You always did have a terrible temper when you lost control of the narrative," Marcus, I say, looking down at him. "But physical violence is the last resort of a man who has run out of lies." I press the final button on my master remote. I do not show another financial document. Instead, a stark black screen appears, and an audio file begins to play through the premium surround sound speakers of the ballroom. The audio is crisp and undeniable. It is a recording intercepted from the burner phone he thought was so secure hidden inside his locked briefcase. It is Marcus speaking to an unlicensed medical supplier. His voice echoes off the crystal chandeliers, chilling the blood of everyone in the room. How long does the digitalis take to clear the bloodstream, he asks on the recording. The supplier responds in a low, gruff tone. 48 hours max. It will look exactly like a stress-induced heart attack. Just make sure she drinks the whole cup. And the $5 million policy is locked in, Marcus asks, his voice dripping with greedy anticipation. Fully activated, the supplier confirms. Once she drops, the money is yours. The audio file clicks off. The silence that follows is absolute and terrifying. You can hear a pin drop in the massive ballroom. The wealthy investors, the city council members, the church elders, they all stare at Marcus with unfiltered horror. He did not just commit fraud, he orchestrated a cold-blooded execution. Marcus stays on his knees, his mouth opening and closing without sound. The undeniable proof of his murder plot hangs in the air, stripping away every ounce of his smooth investment advisor persona. He is a monster exposed in the blinding blue spotlight. Before anyone can process the sheer magnitude of the attempted murder, my mother shatters the silence. The camera cuts to a tight close-up of Beatrice. Her face is a twisted landscape of panic and fury, but her anger is not directed at the man who just tried to assassinate her eldest daughter. Her anger is aimed entirely at me. She marches toward the edge of the stage, pointing a trembling manicured finger directly at my chest. "Are you trying to destroy this family, Nia?" She screams, her voice completely unhinged. "You are airing our dirty laundry in front of the entire city. You are humiliating us. You could have handled this at home, but you just want to ruin your sister and your father. You are a demon." I stare at the woman who gave birth to me. The camera alternates between her furious breakdown and my absolute coldness. She just heard undeniable audio proof that my husband fed me poison for a $5 million payout, and her only concern is the family image. She is more devastated by the public scandal than by the fact that I almost died in that intensive care unit. I slowly walk to the edge of the stage, towering over her. The icy blue spotlight follows me, casting her in my shadow. "I am not destroying this family, Mom," I say, my voice projecting loud and clear, without the need for a microphone. "I am simply reading the autopsy report. You and Dad killed this family the day you decided my corporate salary was a resource to be drained, while my life was an inconvenience to be managed. You let Spencer use your congregation as a piggy bank. You let Chloe treat me like an automated teller machine. And you let Marcus treat me like a disposable asset." My father, Pastor Silas, finally steps forward. He is visibly trembling, leaning heavily on the edge of a banquet table. "Nia, please," he begs, his pastoral authority completely evaporated. "We have lost the church. Spencer let the bank foreclose on the sanctuary today. We are ruined. Show some mercy. We are your parents." I look at the man who stood at the pulpit every Sunday, preaching about righteous behavior, while mortgaging the spiritual home of our Black community to fund a predatory white developer. I let a slow, terrifying smile spread across my face. "You are right, Dad," I say, leaning down slightly. "Spencer did bounce the check. The commercial bank did finalize the foreclosure at exactly 10 o'clock this morning. But do you know what happens when a massive commercial property goes into immediate default? The bank instantly looks to liquidate the debt to the highest bidding private equity firm." Silas stares at me, his breathing becoming shallow and erratic. Beatrice lowers her hand, the fury in her eyes slowly shifting into deep, paralyzing confusion. I pull a single folded legal document from the pocket of my crimson gown. I hold it up for them to see. The paper bears the unmistakable gold seal of the Central Property Registry. "When the bank initiated the liquidation," I say, my voice dropping to a deadly serious cadence, "I authorized a massive wire transfer from my primary forensic holding company. I bought the bank debt entirely in cash. I purchased the foreclosure rights the moment they hit the open market." Beatrice gasps, stepping backward. "What are you saying?" she whispers. "I am saying that Spencer is no longer your creditor," I reply. "The commercial bank is no longer your creditor. Vanguard Trust bought the land, the sanctuary, the fellowship hall, and the academy. and I am the sole owner and primary director of Vanguard Trust. The color drains from my father's face completely. He clutches his chest, looking as though he might collapse right there on the carpet. The megachurch elders sitting in the front row begin muttering among themselves, realizing the massive shift in power that just occurred right in front of their eyes. You called me a useless corporate drone, Mom, I say, staring directly into Beatrice's terrified eyes. You told me I needed to submit to my husband and fund my sister's fake boutique to earn my place in this family. But the truth is, you do not own that church anymore. You do not own the ground you preach on. You do not own the building you use to extort respect from this community. I take a step back, letting the icy light catch the diamonds on my collarbone. I own the church, I declare, the absolute finality of my words ringing through the ballroom. I hold the deed to the entire property. You are standing in front of your entire congregation right now, and you are looking at your new landlord. And let me assure you, my lease terms are completely unforgiving. The devastation on their faces is absolute. Beatrice covers her face with both hands, letting out a loud, ragged sob of pure social defeat. Silas drops into a nearby chair, completely broken, staring blankly at the floor. The kingdom they built on my back has just been legally transferred into my hands. They have lost their power, their prestige, and their sanctuary. They traded their daughter for a seat at a white developer's table, and now they are completely homeless. Marcus is still kneeling on the stage behind me, trapped in the realization that his murder plot is public record. Chloe is still sobbing on the floor, clutching her eviction notices. Spencer is pacing near the back exit, frantically realizing his entire real estate empire is a frozen wasteland. The web of exploitation they wove together has become their very own prison. I turn my back on my parents, dismissing them entirely. I have delivered the final blow. The entire foundation of their toxic existence has been ripped out from under them. I stand tall in my crimson gown, the undisputed master of the battlefield, taking in the total destruction of the enemies who thought they could bury me. If you are watching, the camera drops to the floor, capturing a low-angle tracking shot. You see the polished black tactical boots of federal agents stepping heavily onto the plush hotel carpet. The sheer authority radiating from their synchronized footsteps makes the elite crowd instantly part ways. Special Agent Davis leads the formation, flanked by half a dozen armed agents wearing dark windbreakers with thick yellow letters spelling out the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They march directly down the center aisle, ignoring the gasps and frantic whispers of the politicians and church elders. Their destination is the stage. Spencer, who is inching his way toward the side exit, freezes completely. The arrogant white developer, who spent years using his proximity to my black family as a shield, suddenly realizes that his privilege cannot stop a federal indictment. Spencer Davis says, his voice projecting absolute authority across the ballroom. You are under arrest for multiple counts of federal wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Spencer raises his hands, backing away, trembling like a coward. There must be a misunderstanding, he stammers, looking frantically at the wealthy investors he had just been trying to court. I am a legitimate developer. I am working with the city. You cannot do this right now. My lawyers will have your badge for this. Two agents step forward, grabbing his arms and violently forcing them behind his back. The sharp metallic click of steel handcuffs locking around his wrists is the loudest sound in the room. He is pushed forward, his custom-tailored suit rumpling, as he is paraded past the very people he tried to swindle. Across the room, Marcus sees the steel cuffs and finally understands that his time is completely up. The realization that he is going down for attempted murder snaps his paralysis. He turns and bolts. He abandons his dignity, his wife, and his in-laws, sprinting toward the heavy swinging doors of the catering kitchen. He pushes through the frantic waitstaff, knocking over a tray of champagne flutes that shatter across the floor. He thinks he can slip out through the service elevator and disappear into the city. He kicks open the kitchen exit doors, only to slam chest first into a solid wall of federal tactical gear. I had explicitly instructed Agent Davis to cover the service exits because I knew exactly how cowardly my husband truly was. Two massive agents grab Marcus by the lapels of his tuxedo, slamming him against the stainless steel preparation tables. They drag him kicking and screaming back out into the bright lights of the main ballroom. Marcus is completely hysterical. He is thrashing against the agents, his polished investment advisor persona entirely destroyed. He looks at my father, pleading for salvation. Pastor Silas. Silas, tell them who I am. Marcus begs, tears streaming down his sweaty face. Tell them I am a man of God. Tell them this is a mistake. My father does not move. He does not offer a single word of prayer or protection. Silas simply turns his face away, staring blankly at the wall, fully consumed by his own spectacular ruin. Marcus, you are under arrest, Agent Davis announces, pulling a thick warrant from his jacket. The charges are aggravated, identity theft, federal wire fraud, and the attempted murder of your wife, Nia. The crowd erupts into absolute pandemonium. The local press corps, who had been invited to photograph a ribbon-cutting ceremony, are now frantically snapping pictures of the arrests. The blinding flashes of their cameras illuminate Marcus's terrified, tear-stained face. The community he tried to impress is now watching his total public execution. The agents force him to his knees right at the edge of the stage, securing the heavy steel cuffs around his wrists. Chloe watches the entire scene unfold from the floor of the stage. The sister who spent her entire life being pampered, protected, and elevated above me is suddenly stripped of every single shield she ever had. Her husband is a federal criminal. Her brother-in-law is an attempted murderer. Her boutique is bankrupt. Her parents are homeless. The golden child illusion shatters into a million jagged pieces. She crawls across the carpeted stage, dragging her heavy silver gown over the scattered eviction notices and debt collection letters. She reaches out with trembling hands, grabbing the bottom hem of my crimson dress. She looks up at me, her makeup completely ruined by a flood of desperate, pathetic tears. Nia, please, Chloe wails, her voice cracking with sheer agony. Nia, you have to stop this. You have to tell them to let Spencer go. You have all that money. You own Vanguard Trust. You can pay off his debts. You can fix the church. Please, sister, I am begging you. Do not leave me with nothing. We are blood, Nia. We are family. I look down at the woman who mocked my career, who cheered when my parents drained my college fund, who stood on a luxury yacht smiling, while she thought my heart was failing in a hospital bed. I do not raise my voice. I do not kick her away. I simply reach down and smoothly pull the crimson fabric of my gown out of her desperate grip. You told me I needed to learn how to be a real wife, Chloe. I say, my voice perfectly calm, carrying a chilling detachment. Well, I just audited my marriage and I audited yours. The liabilities were simply too high. Consider this a lesson in risk management. I turn my back on her, stepping over the scattered financial documents. I do not look back at my mother, who is weeping silently into her hands. I do not look at my father, who has lost his entire spiritual kingdom. I walk directly down the center stairs of the stage. The federal agents are hauling Marcus and Spencer toward the main exit, the flashing camera lights capturing their disgraced exit. The elite members of our community part ways. For me, their eyes wide with a mixture of absolute shock and newfound undeniable respect. They expected to attend a real estate gala tonight, but instead they witnessed a masterclass in total financial destruction. I glide through the grand doors, leaving Chloe screaming my name from the floor of a stage she no longer owns. The immediate threat is neutralized, but the true consequences of their greed are only just beginning to settle over the ashes of their former lives. 1 week later, the camera pans smoothly across the perfectly manicured lawn of Chloe's former suburban estate. There are no luxury vehicles parked in the expansive circular driveway. There are no caterers delivering expensive floral arrangements to the front steps. Instead, bright neon orange bank foreclosure notices are plastered aggressively across the custom mahogany double doors. Chloe is dragging 2 heavy black plastic trash bags down the concrete path. Her designer luggage was seized by federal agents to cover Spencer's outstanding restitution. She is wearing a pair of scuffed sneakers and oversized sweatpants, a stark contrast to the glamorous silver gown she wore just 7 days prior. The repossession agents stand on the porch watching her with absolute indifference as she struggles to lift the heavy trash bags into the trunk of a cheap waiting rideshare vehicle. She tries to scream at the driver to help her, but the driver simply rolls up his window, ignoring her tantrum entirely. The golden child has been thoroughly stripped of her gold. The ride share drops. Chloe off at a cramped run, down two-bedroom apartment, on the extreme outskirts of the city. This is the new residence of Pastor Silas and Beatrice. When the bank fraud became public knowledge, the church board of deacons convened an emergency session. They did not just vote to remove my father from the pulpit. They legally excommunicated him from the denomination and immediately evicted my parents from the sprawling pastoral mansion funded by the congregation. Chloe kicks the flimsy apartment door open, dragging her trash bags into a living room that smells strongly of stale cooking oil and cheap carpet cleaner. The space is so incredibly small that her bags instantly block the narrow hallway. "I cannot live in this tiny shoebox," Chloe whines, dropping her bags and crossing her arms. "The air conditioning in here is practically non-existent. Which room is mine, Mom? I need the master bedroom because my back is killing me from carrying my own luggage today." My mother Beatrice walks out of the tiny galley kitchen. She is not wearing her signature designer silk blouses or her extravagant church hats. She is wearing a faded gray cotton shirt, her hair tied back in a messy knot. The stress of total social annihilation has aged her 10 years in a single week. "You will sleep on the pull-out sofa in the living room." Beatrice snaps, her voice devoid of its usual commanding superiority. "Your father and I are taking the single bedroom, and you better figure out how to pay for your own groceries, Chloe, because we have absolutely nothing left. Your husband destroyed our entire lives and left us penniless." Chloe gapes at her mother, utterly shocked that her golden child status has officially expired. "You are blaming me for this," she shrieks, her voice echoing off the thin apartment walls. "You and Dad were the ones who signed the church away. You let Nia destroy us. You were supposed to protect me." My father, Silas, emerges from the cramped bathroom carrying a plastic bucket and a mop. His shoulders are slumped, his posture entirely defeated. He does not offer a prayer of comfort. He does not try to mediate the screaming match between his wife and his favorite daughter. "Stop yelling," Silas mutters, staring blankly at the stained carpet. "Both of you just stop. The neighbors have already filed a noise complaint against us. We have to go to work." "Work?" Chloe scoffs, rolling her eyes. "What work? You are a disgraced pastor. No church in the country will ever hire you again." Silas drops the mop into the bucket with a dull thud. "We are not preaching, Chloe. We are cleaning." When Vanguard Trust formally absorbed the church property, I made a strategic administrative decision. I did not shut down the sanctuary. The hardworking Black families in our community deserve to keep their spiritual home. I restructured the management, bringing in a new, highly vetted pastoral board to guide the congregation. But the massive building required daily maintenance, and my parents desperately needed an income to avoid living on the streets. I instructed my property managers to offer them the only positions they were currently qualified to hold. For the past 3 days, Pastor Silas and Beatrice have been waking up at 4 in the morning to scrub the very floors they used to walk on like royalty. If you take a camera into the sanctuary right now, you will see my mother kneeling on the hardwood, scrubbing the heavy oak pews with a rag soaked in industrial bleach. You will see my father dragging heavy trash bags out of the fellowship hall, wiping down the communal restrooms. The most devastating part for them is not the physical labor. It is the audience. The loyal church members. The same people my mother used to look down on from the front row now walk past her holding their coffee cups, throwing her looks of sheer, unfiltered disgust. They whisper about her greed. They point at Silas as he empties the dumpsters, mocking the man who sold their faith to a white developer. They are experiencing the exact social isolation and public humiliation they actively threatened to use against me. Back in the cramped apartment, a loud, sharp knock on the front door interrupts Chloe's complaints. Silas opens it to find a uniformed legal courier holding a thick manila envelope. The courier hands over the package and demands a signature before walking quickly down the dingy exterior hallway. Silas carries the heavy envelope to the small dining table. Beatrice and Chloe gather around, watching as his trembling hands tear open the seal. He pulls out a thick stack of legal documents bearing the unmistakable official crest of Vanguard Trust. "What is it?" Beatrice asks, her voice shaking with fresh panic. "Is she suing us for more?" Silas stares at the first page, his eyes scanning the bold printed text. His breathing becomes shallow. He drops the papers onto the table, sinking heavily into a cheap plastic chair. It is a lease agreement, Silas whispers, running a hand over his tired face. For this apartment. Chloe grabs the papers, scanning the paragraphs. What do you mean, a lease agreement? We rented this place from a private landlord online. You rented it from a subsidiary management company owned entirely by Vanguard Trust. I made sure of it. I track real estate movements for a living, ensuring they landed exactly where I wanted them was effortless. Chloe flips to the second page, reading the highlighted terms of the contract out loud. Her voice grows increasingly frantic with every single word. Tenant agrees to a mandatory wage garnishment program. She reads, her hands visibly trembling. 100% of all hourly wages earned by Silas and Beatrice from their janitorial duties at the Vanguard Sanctuary will be automatically routed to this property management firm. 50% will cover the base rent of this unit. The remaining 50% will be directly applied to the outstanding principal debt owed to Nia, representing the precise financial value extorted from her over the past 10 years. Beatrice covers her mouth, suppressing a loud, horrified gasp. She means the wedding, she whispers. She means the boutique loans, the college funds, the luxury cars. She calculated every single dollar we ever made her spend on you, Chloe. Chloe drops the contract onto the table, backing away, as if the paper itself is actively burning her hands. We will never pay that off. She panics, pacing the tiny living room. That is hundreds of thousands of dollars. You will be scrubbing those church toilets for the rest of your natural lives just to afford this terrible apartment. You have to call her mom. You have to beg her to show us some mercy. We are her family. Beatrice looks around the tiny, suffocating apartment, smelling the cheap bleach lingering on her own hands. She remembers standing in my sleek glass corporate office, demanding that I sacrifice my financial security to protect Chloe's vanity. She remembers threatening to destroy my reputation in front of the entire congregation if I did not comply. She is not going to show us mercy, Chloe. Beatrice says, her voice completely hollow, devoid of any remaining fight or arrogance. We taught her exactly how to be ruthless, and we gave her all the power she needed to execute the lesson. They sit together in the cramped, dimly lit room, listening to the loud traffic rattling the thin windows of their new reality. There are no expensive dinners waiting for them. There are no prestigious political galas to attend. There are no sycophantic church elders waiting to kiss their rings. They are entirely stripped of their gold, their power, and their pride. They are trapped in a cycle of poverty and grueling manual labor, completely beholden to the daughter they threw away. They have finally tasted the absolute bitterness of their own medicine, and the flavor is going to linger in their mouths for a very long time. The camera brings you back to exactly where this story began. I am standing on the sprawling private balcony of my master suite. The cold night air feels incredibly refreshing against my skin. Far below me, the city stretches out like a glittering ocean of diamonds and gold. The chaotic noise of the traffic is nothing but a faint whisper from this high altitude. I am holding a crystal glass of expensive vintage red wine. The liquid catches the ambient light from my living room, perfectly matching the deep crimson dress I wore on the night I burned their empire to the ground. If you are watching me right now, imagine the camera slowly pulling back. It glides from the edge of the glass, sliding smoothly across the imported hardwood floors, moving further and further away to capture the sheer magnitude of the piece I have finally secured. There is absolutely no anger left in my body. There is no resentment, no lingering bitterness, and no sorrow. There is only the absolute stillness of a woman who completely controls her own destiny. 1 year has passed since the Black Excellence Gala. The federal justice system moves slowly, but it moves with lethal, terrifying precision when you hand them a perfectly organized forensic blueprint. Marcus tried to charm his way through this trial. He wore his expensive tailored suits and flashed his signature investment advisor smile to the jury, hoping to manipulate them the same way he manipulated me for years. But charming smiles do not invalidate documented bank fraud, and a smooth voice cannot erase a recorded confession of attempted murder. The judge was completely immune to his gaslighting tactics. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of early parole. He went from sipping premium champagne on the sun-drenched deck of a Caribbean superyacht to wearing a standard-issue orange jumpsuit in a concrete cell measuring 8 by 10 feet. There are no ocean views in federal prison. There are no luxury car dealerships and no stolen black credit cards. He is surrounded by concrete and steel, completely stripped of his voice, his arrogance, and his freedom. Spencer thought his wealth and his skin color would protect him. He genuinely believed that his affluent connections would pull strings to make the federal indictments quietly disappear. He learned the hard way that wealthy investors sprint in the opposite direction the moment the Federal Bureau of Investigation announces a racketeering charge. His entire real estate portfolio was seized and liquidated by the government to pay back the municipal grants he stole. Spencer received a 20-year sentence for money laundering and wire fraud. The arrogant developer who made a living displacing black families and exploiting our historical neighborhoods is now just another federal inmate. He has no community to hide behind anymore. And then there is my sister Chloe, the golden child who believed she was destined for high society royalty. Without Spencer's fraudulent money, and without my secret financial subsidies, her entire illusion shattered overnight. Today, Chloe works as a part-time cashier at a discount grocery store. She stands on her feet for 8 hours a day, scanning barcodes and bagging produce, to slowly chip away at the mountain of personal debt she accumulated. She no longer wears designer silk dresses or carries $30,000 handbags. She wears a polyester uniform and a plastic name tag. At night, she takes the public bus back to the cramped two-bedroom apartment where she sleeps on a thin pull-out sofa in the living room. My parents, Pastor Silas and Beatrice, are right there in that same apartment with her. They wake up before dawn every single day to mop the floors and scrub the toilets of the very sanctuary they used to rule. They endure the daily humiliation of serving the congregation they once betrayed. And every month, half of their meager wages is automatically routed into my holding accounts to repay the thousands of dollars they stole from me over the last decade. They are trapped in a prison of their own making, serving a life sentence of manual labor and social obscurity. They wanted to maintain their perfect image at all costs. Now their only image is one of complete disgrace. I take a slow, measured sip of my red wine, letting the rich flavor coat my tongue. For 34 years, my parents and my sister looked at me and called me a disappointment. They told me I was too rigid, too focused on my career, and too independent. They told me I needed to shrink myself to fit into the suffocating box they built for me. They demanded that I sacrifice my hard-earned wealth, my peace of mind, and ultimately my own life just to sustain their toxic illusions. They expected me to be the silent, carrying pillar of the family, gracefully absorbing their abuse while handing over my paycheck. They truly believed that because I am a black woman, I was culturally obligated to bow my head, endure their disrespect, and sacrifice my entire existence for the sake of family loyalty. They weaponized the concept of family to keep me tethered to their greed. But they forgot two incredibly vital facts. First, you should never ever steal the emergency credit card of a senior forensic accountant and leave a digital paper trail. And second, you should never assume that a successful self-made black woman will simply lie down and let you destroy her. We do not just endure. We calculate. We strategize. We build fortresses out of the stones people throw at us. And when we finally strike back, we do not miss our targets. I look out over the glittering city skyline one last time. The night is beautiful and the air is perfectly clear. I raise my crystal glass slightly in a silent toast to the incredible, completely untouchable future I have built for myself. The heavy chains of obligation are gone. The parasites have been eradicated. I am the sole architect of my life, and I have never felt more powerful. I smile, drinking the last drop of the wine. The screen fades into absolute black.